You ever meet someone who just gets it? Like, they always have the perfect thing to say in class. They answer questions without even raising their hand. And somehow, they never look stressed. Meanwhile, you're sitting there thinking, wait, did we even read the same textbook? I used to think those people were just born with some kind of magical brain upgrade, like they came out of the womb already subscribed to Genius Monthly. But here's the thing, that's not really the truth. And today, I want to let you in on the secrets nobody actually tells you about being smart. I remember this one time in school. The teacher asked a question about a book we were supposed to read. Now, I had read the book. Well, most of it. Okay, fine. I watched the movie adaptation and hoped for the best. But the guy sitting next to me, he raised his hand and answered like he'd not only read the book, but also studied the author's childhood and possibly lived through the entire plot. And in my head, I was like, wow, this dude's brain is running on rocket fuel, and mine's on low battery mode. Back then, being smart to me meant knowing more facts than everyone else. So I crammed, memorized random trivia, and even tried to casually drop big words into conversations, which almost never worked. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. Being smart is way less about what you know, and way more about how you think. Let's be real, most of us have been in that pretend to understand situation. You're in a group, someone starts explaining something complicated, and instead of asking for clarification, you just nod like, oh yes, quantum physics, my favorite topic. Inside, your brain's screaming, what are quarks again? Are they, like, ducks? The problem is, we've been sold this idea that intelligence is fixed. You're either born smart or you're average. But that's not how it works. Your brain is more like a muscle, and muscles grow when you use them the right way. Here's the first big secret nobody tells you. Smart people aren't always the ones who know the most. They're the ones who know how to connect the dots. They're not trying to memorize every detail. They're looking for patterns, linking one idea to another, and asking the right questions. For example, you could memorize the entire dictionary and still be bad at conversations. Or you could know just a handful of ideas deeply and be able to explain them so simply that even a 5-year-old could understand. That second person? That's who people actually think is smart. And here's where most of us mess up. We think learning is just about cramming facts into our brains until it overflows. But real learning? It's about curiosity. It's about wanting to know why things work, not just how. Take my friend Marco. He's not a straight A student. In fact, I've seen his grades, and let's just say his report card had a lot of room for improvement. But when something interests him, like photography, he will research everything. The history, the science, the technique. And when he talks about it, he makes it so interesting that even people who don't care about photography end up asking him for tips. That's smart. Not because he knows a lot, but because he can make other people see what he sees. Here's the second secret nobody tells you. It's not about knowing the answer. It's about knowing how to find the answer. That's why some people look like geniuses at work or in school. They don't magically know everything. They just know where to look, who to ask, and how to figure things out faster than others. Think of it like Google versus a random person on the street. Google doesn't know things in the human sense. It just knows where to find the right page in 0.02 seconds. Smart people do that, but inside their heads. The third secret? Smart isn't always serious. Some of the sharpest people I've met are the ones who aren't afraid to look silly, crack jokes, or admit they don't know something. Why? Because they're not wasting energy pretending to be perfect. They're too busy learning. And maybe this is where you've been holding yourself back. You want to look smart, pop, so you avoid asking questions in case you look dumb. But the reality? Every time you skip asking, you skip learning. The people who get ahead are the ones who say, wait, can you explain that again without shame? Think about it. The world's most famous scientists, inventors, and creators are basically professional question askers. Einstein literally said, the important thing is not to stop questioning. And yes, I just quoted Einstein. That means this video just got 12% smarter. Now, here's a little perspective shift that blew my mind when I learned it. Maybe it's not that you're not smart enough. Maybe your environment is setting you up to fail. If you're constantly distracted, surrounded by people who don't challenge you, and always multitasking, your brain is basically trying to run a marathon while juggling flaming torches. You can be capable of incredible thinking, but if your surroundings are pulling you in 100 directions, you'll never see it. So before you label yourself as not smart, try changing your setup. Study in a place where you can focus. Hang out with people who talk about ideas, not just gossip. Challenge yourself to learn something uncomfortable. You'll be surprised at how quickly your brain adapts. And this brings me to the fun part. Because now that you know being smart is more about how you think than what you know, we can talk about the doable steps that actually make a difference. Not read 500 books a year or wake up at 4 a.m. and drink celery juice. I mean, small, realistic changes that add up. But I'll get into those in just a second. Because first, let me tell you about the time I accidentally looked like a genius without even trying. I was at this dinner, and someone brought up this obscure fact about space travel. Now, I didn't know much about space travel, except for what I'd learned from watching sci-fi movies. But instead of trying to bluff my way through, I asked one simple question. How do astronauts keep their muscles from weakening in zero gravity? Suddenly, the whole table turned to me like I just dropped the most thought-provoking question of the night. People started debating. Someone pulled up a NASA video, and for the next 20 minutes, everyone was excitedly sharing ideas. I didn't even answer the question. I just asked it, and somehow I was the smart one in the room. That's when I realized sometimes the smartest move isn't having the answer. It's knowing the question that makes everyone think deeper. So, how do you actually become that person? Not in a fake, I read one Wikipedia page kind of way, but in a way that's genuine, useful, and actually fun. Here are the 3 game-changing habits that'll quietly turn you into the person people call smart, without you needing to wear glasses just for the aesthetic. First, learn in tiny, curious bursts. Stop thinking of learning as this huge, exhausting thing that only happens in classrooms or textbooks. Instead, turn your everyday life into micro-learning moments. Listen to a podcast while you cook. Watch a 5-minute explainer video on something random before bed. Read 1 article a day on a topic you don't usually think about. It's like giving your brain little snacks instead of one massive, overwhelming meal. And just like snacks, the more variety, the better. Here's the magic part. After a few weeks, you'll start seeing weird connections between totally different things. You'll be watching a movie and think, wait, this is exactly like that thing I read about Roman history. That's the connect the dots superpower we talked about earlier, and it grows the more you feed it. Second, ask better questions. Most people ask dead-end questions like, is this right? Or what's the answer? But smart people ask open-ended ones. Why does this work that way? What would happen if we did it differently? How does this connect to something else I know? When you ask better questions, you're not just fishing for an answer. You're building a map of how the world works. And honestly, people will start seeing you as insightful just because you make them think. One trick I use? When someone tells me something new, I ask, what's the most surprising thing you learned about that? It's like unlocking a secret level in the conversation. Third, get comfortable with I don't know. This one's tough because our ego hates it. But here's the plot twist. The moment you admit you don't know something, you give yourself permission to learn it. And when you learn it, you actually grow, instead of pretending you already knew. I once asked a friend to explain cryptocurrency to me like I was 5. He laughed, but then he gave me the simplest, clearest explanation I'd ever heard. And now I can explain it to other people like I'm some kind of blockchain wizard. All because I was willing to say, hey, I have no clue how this works. Help me out. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, but won't people think I'm dumb if I admit I don't know stuff? Nope. Not if you follow it with curiosity. When you say, I don't know, but I'd love to learn, people respect that. And weirdly, it often makes them think you're smarter than the ones who pretend. Here's the big picture. Being smart isn't about some magic IQ number. It's about keeping your brain open, connecting dots others don't see, and not letting your ego block your growth. And the cool part? That's something anyone can start doing today. So maybe right now, you don't feel like the smart one. Maybe you've been in rooms where you stayed quiet because you were afraid of saying something wrong. Maybe you've scrolled past articles or videos that looked too complicated because you didn't want to feel lost. But here's the truth. Intelligence isn't a club you're born into. It's a skill you build, choice by choice, question by question. You can start small. Pick one thing you've been curious about but never explored, and go learn it today. Not because it's on a test, not because you need it for work, but because it lights up your brain. You'll be amazed at how that one spark can grow. And remember, nobody's got it all figured out. Even the people who look like they have all the answers are just better at finding them. So the next time you feel less smart, try this. Ask one good question. Make one unexpected connection. Learn one new thing you didn't know yesterday. Do that often enough, and one day someone will look at you and think, wow, they just get it. And you'll smile, because you'll know you didn't get there by pretending. You got there by staying curious. If this made you feel just a little lighter, like maybe smart isn't some unreachable thing, hit subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, but because I want us to keep growing together. You and me, one secret at a time.